You want to block them. I know you do. Every single part of you is screaming to just hit that button and disappear. But if you do that right now, you will regret it. Not because they deserve your presence, but because you are about to make the one mistake that will reset everything and push them even further away than they already are. Here is what nobody tells you about the avoidant. They are not running from you. They are running from themselves. And the moment you understand that, everything changes. The way you respond changes. The way you heal changes. And most importantly, the outcome changes. Stay with me for the next few minutes, because what I am about to share with you is going to completely rewire how you see this dynamic. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Drop the word free in the comments right now if you are ready to stop giving your power away and start doing the one thing that actually works. So let us start at the very beginning, because most people come to me or they find videos like this and they are already in the thick of it. They are already exhausted. They are already confused. They have already sent the long text. They have already had the breakdown at 2 in the morning. They have already begged in a way they swore they would never beg. And now they are sitting there feeling humiliated, feeling empty, and wondering how they got here. And I want to say something to you very clearly before we go any further. You did not get here because you are weak. You did not get here because you are needy or crazy or too much. You got here because you were trying to connect with someone who has built an entire internal fortress around the concept of connection itself. And when you keep knocking on a door that someone has deliberately sealed shut, eventually you start to look desperate. Not because you are desperate, but because the door was never meant to open the way you expected it to. That distinction matters enormously. Hold on to it. Now let us talk about what an avoidant actually is. And I mean really talk about it. Not the surface level stuff you have probably already heard. The avoidant attachment style does not develop because someone decided one day to be emotionally unavailable. It does not come from nowhere. It comes from early childhood experiences where expressing needs, expressing emotions, or reaching for connection was either met with rejection, with dismissal, with punishment, or with complete indifference. The child learned something very specific in that environment. The child learned that needing people is dangerous, that depending on someone is a vulnerability that will be used against you, that the safest version of yourself is the version that needs nothing and no one. So they built walls, not as a strategy, not as a manipulation, as survival. And here is where it gets incredibly complex. As adults, these same people still crave connection. Deeply. That part does not go away. The human need for love and attachment does not disappear just because someone learned to suppress it. What happens instead is that they want connection. They pursue connection. They even fall in love. And then the moment that connection starts to feel real, starts to feel close, starts to feel like something they might actually need, the alarm system goes off. The internal voice that was trained from childhood screams danger, and they pull back. They do not pull back because they do not want you. They pull back because wanting you terrifies them. Now you have to understand something about what this does to the person on the other side, which is you. This creates what is one of the most psychologically destabilizing patterns in all of adult relationships. Because you are not dealing with a consistent rejection. You are dealing with a push and pull, hot and cold, available and then gone, present and then distant, loving and then ice cold. And your nervous system, which is designed to seek resolution to stress, cannot find resolution. Because the signal keeps changing. This is not your fault. This is not weakness. This is your biology responding to an inconsistent attachment figure the same way it was. Designed to respond. With hypervigilance. With obsession. With the inability to think about anything else. With the compulsive need to fix it, explain it, resolve it, get closure, get them back, get something that makes the uncertainty stop. And this is exactly where most people go wrong. Because in that state of hypervigilance and anxiety, the actions you take are driven by fear, not by strategy, not by self-respect, not by clarity, by pure, raw fear of losing this person. And fear-based actions almost never produce the outcome you actually want. Let us walk through what most people do when an avoidant pulls away. Because this list is going to be painfully recognizable and that is okay. Recognizing it is the first step to stopping it. The first thing most people do is pursue. They reach out more. They text more. They call more. They show up. They try to create the closeness that suddenly feels like it has evaporated. And from the avoidance internal world, this pursuing behavior feels exactly like the enmeshment and the loss of autonomy that their nervous system was trained to fear. So they pull back more, not because they are cruel, because your pursuit is confirming the story their body has always believed. That closeness equals being consumed. The second thing most people do is they over-explain. They write the long messages. They try to make the avoidant understand how their behavior is affecting them. They provide emotional detail. They try to create the kind of rational, logical case for the relationship that they hope will break through the walls. And the avoidant, who has learned to distrust emotional expression as a manipulation or as a demand, shuts down further. Because now in their internal experience, the emotional intensity of what you are expressing feels like confirmation that they need to protect themselves from you. The third thing most people do is they start adjusting themselves. They make themselves smaller. They stop bringing up the things that matter to them because they do not want to trigger the withdrawal. They start performing a version of themselves that they hope the avoidant will feel safe with. They become the easy, breezy, no-needs version of themselves. And this works in the short term. The avoidant relaxes a little. Things feel lighter. But here is the trap. You are now in a relationship with someone who is partially in love with a person that does not fully exist. And you are slowly, quietly suffocating the most authentic parts of yourself. The fourth thing is the begging. And when I say begging, I do not just mean literally getting on your knees and asking someone not to leave. Begging comes in many forms. It is the repeated texting. It is the explaining over and over why you are a good partner. It is the justifying of your own emotional needs. It is the apologizing for things that are not your fault. It is the desperate energy that seeps into every interaction, even when your words are perfectly tagged. Avoidants can feel that energy, and it confirms to them that being close to you means being responsible for your emotional state, and that is something their attachment system cannot tolerate. The fifth thing is blocking them. And I want to spend a real moment here because this is the thing that feels most powerful and most righteous in the moment. It feels like power. It feels like dignity. It feels like finally taking control of a situation that has made you feel completely out of control. And sometimes blocking is absolutely the right call. But the reason it backfires for so many people in the avoidant dynamic is this. The avoidant already believes that relationships end badly. They already believe that intimacy leads to rejection and pain. When you block them in a reactive moment of anger or hurt, you are actually giving them the ending they expected. You are confirming the narrative, and some avoidants will feel relief. Not because they do not care, but because relief is the emotion their system is most practiced at feeling when the threat of closeness is removed. And then weeks later, when you unblock them, or when you reach out, or when the emotions hit again, and you cannot stay away, you are right back where you started. Except now, there is an additional layer of drama, of unpredictability, of instability, that makes the whole foundation even more shaky. So what do you do instead? What is the thing that actually works? Let me tell you about something called the regulated response. And I want you to really hear this. Not just intellectually process it, but really feel it. The regulated response is not the silent treatment. It is not a strategy to get them back. It is not a manipulation technique. It is not something you do in order to make them chase you. It is a fundamental shift in how you are showing up in this dynamic. And it starts not with them, it starts entirely with you. Here is the core principle. You cannot regulate someone else's nervous system by dysregulating your own. Read that again. You cannot create safety for someone who is afraid of closeness by becoming the embodiment of anxious, fearful energy. It is neurologically impossible. The energy you are carrying when you are in pursuit mode, when you are begging mode, when you are desperate mode, is the exact energy that the avoidance nervous system reads as danger. So the first thing you do is you stop, not as a tactic, as a genuine practice of self-regulation. You stop reaching out. You stop over-explaining. You stop adjusting yourself to manage their comfort. You stop making yourself smaller. You stop performing the easy version of yourself. You stop because you need to stop, because what you have been doing is not working, and because your own nervous system desperately needs relief. Now, a lot of people hear this and they say, okay, so I am doing no contact to make them miss me. And I want to be very clear that this framing will undermine everything. The moment you are in no contact as a strategy, you are still mentally, emotionally, energetically in the relationship. You are still tracking their social media, even if you are not responding. You are still crafting what you will say when they reach out. You are still measuring how many days have passed. You are still living inside the avoidant's head. And that is not self-regulation. That is still fear-based living, just with quieter behavior. Real distance, the kind that actually changes the dynamic, looks completely different. It looks like actually filling your life with things that matter to you, not to make them jealous, not so that you can casually mention it when they come back, but because your life was happening before them and it needs to keep happening now. It looks like reconnecting with friends you have been neglecting because this relationship has consumed you. It looks like starting the project you put off, going back to the gym or the yoga class or the hiking trail or whatever thing you stopped doing when the relationship started taking up all your mental bandwidth. It looks like therapy or journaling or sitting with a trusted person and actually processing what you are feeling instead of suppressing it. And here is why this actually changes things in the avoidant dynamic specifically. When an avoidant pulls back and the other person pursues, the avoidant's prediction is confirmed. They knew this would happen. They knew closeness would feel like this. Their worldview is validated. But when an avoidant pulls back and the other person does not pursue, when the other person simply continues living their life, the avoidant's prediction is disrupted. The usual script is broken. And disrupting the script is the only thing that creates genuine curiosity in someone who has learned to expect a specific relational pattern. This is not manipulation. The avoidant noticing that you are not chasing them is not some trick you are pulling. It is reality. You are living your life, and that reality is genuinely surprising to them in a way that opens something up. Now let us talk about the harder, deeper work. Because the distance, the self-regulation, the filling your life back up, those are the behavioral components. But there is a psychological component that runs underneath all of this, and it is the one that almost nobody wants to sit with. Why are you here? Not why are you watching this video? Why are you in this dynamic? What is it about this specific kind of person that has drawn you in so completely? Why does the unpredictability feel so much more electric than consistency? Why does their attention, when they do give it, feel so much more powerful than the consistent presence of someone who would be available? Why do you keep choosing the person who cannot choose you back? Or who can only choose you sometimes? Or who chooses you in a way that keeps you permanently uncertain? And before you answer that, I want to offer you something that might be uncomfortable to hear. Most people who are deeply activated by the avoidant dynamic are not just dealing with the avoidant in front of them. They are dealing with an old wound. Something from their own childhood, their own history, their own attachment template that was formed long before this relationship existed. Maybe you had a parent who was inconsistent with their affection, who was sometimes warm and attentive and then cold and distant without explanation. And your child brain learned that love looks like this, that love feels like uncertainty, like chasing, like earning, like needing to perform well enough to get the warmth back. And as an adult, the avoidant feels like home. Not because they are good for you, but because they feel familiar. Because the emotional blueprint of this relationship matches the emotional blueprint of something much older. This is not weakness. This is not a character flaw. This is neuroscience. This is attachment theory. This is the way the brain works. We are drawn to what we know, even when what we know is painful. But here is the thing about recognizing this. Once you see the pattern, you can choose differently. Not immediately, not without effort, but the awareness itself is transformative. Because now, when you feel that pull toward begging or pursuing, you can ask a different question. You can ask yourself, am I responding to this person right now? Or am I responding to something much older that has nothing to do with them? That question creates a gap between the feeling and the action. And in that gap is where your power lives. Now let us talk about what regulated engagement actually looks like when communication does. happen, because going completely silent is not always the answer. Especially if you are in an established relationship with someone avoidant. Sometimes you need to communicate. Sometimes situations arise. Sometimes they reach out. And the way most people respond when the avoidant finally does reach out after a period of a row, they either go cold and punishing to try to create power, which the avoidant reads as yet another confirmation that relationships are painful and unpredictable. Or they go warm and relieved and immediately pour everything out that they have been holding back, which confirms to the avoidant that their absence was warranted because your attachment needs are overwhelming. Regulated engagement is neither of those things. It is genuinely neutral. It is genuinely warm without being clingy. It is present without being desperate. It is responsive without being immediately emotionally flooded. It sounds like someone who has been okay, not fake okay, not performing okay, actually doing their own thing and is now available to connect without their entire emotional stability, depending on the outcome of this conversation. This is incredibly hard to do when you have been sitting in anxious attachment for weeks, which is exactly why the inner work, the actual self-regulation work, is not optional. You cannot fake this. The avoidant can feel the difference between someone who has genuinely been living their life and someone who has been waiting by the phone but is now pretending they have not. Let me talk about the concept of emotional mirroring for a moment, because this is something that plays a significant role in the avoidant dynamic, and most can stab. When you are in an anxious attachment state, your nervous system is in a state of activation. Stress hormones are present. You are on high alert. Your body is literally scanning for threat constantly. And when you are in this state and you interact with the avoidant, something happens. You bring that activation into the interaction. And because we are wired to regulate cooperatively with others, the avoidant picks up on that activation. And instead of it pulling them toward you, it triggers their own defensive system. Their walls go up. Their distance increases. Not as a choice, as a biological response to perceived threat. Conversely, when your nervous system is genuinely regulated, when you have done the work to bring yourself out of the fear state, when you enter an interaction from a place of genuine groundedness, the avoidance nervous system has a different response. There is less threat to defend against. The walls can ease slightly, not completely, but slightly. And slightly is everything. This is why people sometimes describe the experience of suddenly becoming less interested in a dismissive avoidant and then having the avoidant pursue them. It is not magic. It is not a trick. It is that when the anxiously attached person finally began to regulate, the entire emotional landscape of the dynamic shifted. The avoidant could breathe, and paradoxically, being able to breathe made closeness feel safer. Now I need to address something important. Because this is where a lot of people take a wrong turn with everything I am describing. Everything I have shared so far is not a strategy to get the avoidant back. Let me say that again more clearly. This is not a strategy to get the avoidant back. This is a strategy to get yourself back. To become the most grounded, the most regulated, the most authentically full version of yourself. And from that place, you can make a clear decision about whether this relationship is actually what you want. Because here is what happens when you stop pursuing and you do the inner work and you genuinely regulate and you genuinely build your life back up. One of two things happens. Either the avoidant, noticing the shift, does begin to move toward you, slowly, cautiously, in the way avoidants are capable of moving. And because you are now regulated, you can engage with that from a place of discernment rather than desperation. You can evaluate whether they are actually doing any of their own work, whether they are capable of the level of intimacy and commitment you actually need, whether this relationship can be what you genuinely want it to be, from a clear head, not a desperate heart. Or the second thing that happens is you realize, from this grounded place, that you have outgrown the need for this specific dynamic, that the life you have rebuilt without them is actually fuller and richer than the life you had with them. That the peace you feel in your own nervous system is something you are not willing to trade away, again, and you choose yourself, not in anger, not in punishment, but in genuine clarity. Both of those outcomes are wins. Neither of them is possible when you are in the begging, pursuing, blocking and unblocking cycle. Let me also address the myth of closure. Because so many people who are caught in this dynamic are desperately seeking closure. They want the conversation that explains everything. The acknowledgement from the avoidant that they hurt you, the apology that finally makes it okay, the explanation that makes sense of all the hot and cold behavior so that your brain can file it away and stop obsessing. And I want to be honest with you about something. With an avoidant, that conversation is very rarely available. Not because they do not have remorse, not because they do not have feelings, but because the avoidant's entire system is built around not accessing and not articulating their own emotional interior. Asking an avoidant for the emotionally attuned, vulnerable, responsibility-taking conversation that you need for closure is a little bit like asking someone with a broken leg to run a marathon for you. The apparatus required simply does not exist in the way you need it to. So what do you do with that? You learn to give yourself closure. And I know how that sounds. It sounds like a consolation prize. It sounds like settling for less. But I want to reframe it for you. Giving yourself closure is actually the most powerful thing you can do, because it means you stop outsourcing your healing to someone who does not have the tools to provide it. It means you take your own emotional resolution into your own hands. You tell yourself the story that needs to be told. You grieve the relationship you wanted but did not get. You acknowledge the love that was real even if the relationship was not sustainable. And you let yourself move forward without needing their permission to do so. That is power. Real, genuine, lasting power. Now let me talk about something that I think is the most important piece of this entire power. Conversation. And it is something that very few people are willing to really sit with. Your worth is not contingent on their ability to see it. Read that slowly. Your worth is not contingent on their ability to see it. An avoidance withdrawal is not a verdict on your value as a person or as a partner. It is not evidence that you are too much or not enough. It is not proof that you are unlovable. It is evidence of their own internal experience, their own wiring, their own unresolved attachment wounds. Their behavior is entirely, completely, 100% about them. And the degree to which you have internalized their distance as information about your own worth is the degree to which you have handed over something that was never theirs to hold. Your worth is inherent. It does not require their validation. It does not increase when they lean in and decrease when they pull away. It is constant. It was there before them. It is there during them. It will be there after them. This is not a platitude. This is a practical truth. Because when you genuinely internalize your own worth, the desperate energy that drives, pursuing and begging and blocking and obsessing simply does not have the same grip. You can still feel pain. You can still feel grief. You can still want the relationship, but you do it from a foundation of knowing that you will be okay regardless. And that foundation changes everything about how you show up. Now let me bring this all together, because I want to give you something practical to walk away with. Not a to-do list, not a 5-step strategy, but a genuine framework for what to actually do from here. The first thing is to stop the actions that are driven by fear. You know what they are. The repetitive texting, the long explaining messages, the monitoring of their social media, the performing a version of yourself that you think they will accept. Stop them, not because stopping them is a tactic, but because they are hurting you. They are keeping you in a fear state, and they are not producing the outcome you want. The second thing is to genuinely invest in your own regulation. This might mean therapy. It might mean breath work. It might mean exercise. It might mean getting off your phone for periods of time. It might mean telling a trusted person exactly what is going on so that you stop carrying it alone. It might mean journaling. It might mean sitting with the discomfort instead of numbing it. Whatever it means for you, do it. Make your own nervous system a priority. The third thing is to explore your own attachment patterns with genuine curiosity and without judgment. Ask yourself the hard questions. Why does this dynamic feel familiar? Where else have you felt this specific kind of longing mixed with anxiety? What beliefs about love and worth were formed in your early life that this relationship is activating? You do not have to have all the answers right away. Just be willing to look. The fourth thing is to rebuild your life around yourself, not around the relationship, Not around what they are doing or not doing. Around the things that genuinely light you up. Around your friendships, your creativity, your goals, your health, your joy. Not as performance, not as a distraction, as an actual return to yourself. The fifth thing is to allow clarity to emerge. When you are not in a constant state of fear and pursuit, clarity becomes possible. You can start to see the relationship as it is, rather than as you have been hoping it will become. You can make decisions from a grounded place about what you actually want and what you are willing to accept. And the sixth thing, the deepest thing, is to practice receiving your own love. The love you have been pouring towards someone who could not fully receive it. That love is yours. It belongs to you. You have enormous capacity for connection and warmth and devotion, and you deserve to have that directed, at least in significant part, toward yourself. Not selfishly, not in a way that closes you off to others, but in a way that makes you the foundation of your own life, rather than building your foundation on someone else's availability. Let me leave you with this. The avoidant in your life is not a villain. They are a person with wounds that run deep and walls that were built as a matter of survival. They are not broken beyond repair, but they can only do their own healing on their own timeline and only if they choose to. You cannot love someone into healing. You cannot pursue someone into presence. You cannot beg someone into choosing you. What you can do is choose yourself, fully, radically, without apology. And that choice, that single choice, is the most powerful thing available to you in this moment. Not blocking in a reactive rage. Not begging in a desperate spiral. Just the quiet, consistent, deeply rooted decision to come home to yourself. That is what changes things. That is what shifts the dynamic. And more importantly, that is what saves you regardless of what they decide to do. You deserve a love that does not require you to shrink. You deserve a love that meets you where you are. You deserve a love that does not keep you guessing. And the first step toward that love is believing, genuinely believing that it exists, that you are worth it, and that you are capable of choosing it. Now go do the work.